Good afternoon. It is a fantastic Friday. And for many cases, that fantastic Friday could be a, a challenging Friday. It could be a celebration Friday. It could be a Friday getting ready for the weekend. It could be a host of things, right? But either way, it's a fantastic Friday. It's better than being, um, well, never mind. I think you get my point. You're alive and you have the opportunity to engage, so it should be a fantastic Friday. I've heard some great comments regarding outlook and perspective on life and days. One of them I've heard is I'm doing the best I can with what I got. Another one that I've heard is managing complexity with grace. Another one that I heard is either I've got it or it's on its way. Another one that I've heard is uh, today was a shot and tomorrow's another shot. you know, so a lot of comments that people have made regarding how they approach different days of the week, even when those days can be challenging. But as we guys come in on this Friday, of course, drop your city and drop your state in the chat. Let us know where you are streaming with us from. We've had some good interaction and good responses from various platforms. Facebook and LinkedIn have been pretty solid, and we're going to continue with these conversations as we are leading and driving towards um, the end of Small Business Awareness Month and driving towards the Advantage 24 event that is coming up. That's coming up, and let me just check something really quick, and we're gonna get ready to dive in to today's conversation. So here's where we are. What we're diving into in today's conversation is emotional intelligence is a big part of financial intelligence. Now, again, as you guys come in, drop your city and drop your state in the chat. But but I want to be clear, and I want to be sensitive as well. All of us were raised in different home environments, and we were exposed to different degrees of financial intelligence. And to that end, we were also raised in a home environment and a community that had different degrees of emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, for most people, emotional intelligence is not even a conversation that they regularly have. I mean, a lot of times when you talk about emotional intelligence, you're really talking about typically a white collar concept or a professional concept, a 9 to 5 concept, a soft skills concept, or maybe even a C suite and an executive concept. And although those things are accurate, emotional intelligence is a large part of our life, period. Let me say that again. Emotional intelligence is a large part of our life, period. Emotional intelligence impacts how you manage a business. It impacts how you lead a marriage and participate in a marriage. It impacts how you raise children. It impacts how you scale up the professional ladder. It impacts how you deal with bosses and coworkers and colleagues and managers. Emotional intelligence is, uh, again, it permeates. Emotional intelligence permeates. It is a key component to every aspect of our life. And depending on how you were raised, and then depending on what you were exposed to in your early adult life, you can have a greater or a lesser degree of emotional intelligence, which directly affects financial intelligence. Now, again, this is very important. As you guys jump on, please drop your city and drop your state in the chat. Because there's some people who grew up in a context where emotional intelligence, even though they may not even know the term, it's popping off. It is being rash with words. It is thinking second, speaking first, apologizing later. I mean, there are a lot of dynamics, to different environments about emotional intelligence. But make no mistake about it, your ability, my ability to be aware of my emotions and then to manage them in a productive way is a skill. Let me say that again. Your ability and my ability to be aware of our emotions and then manage those emotions in a productive way is a skill that you develop. Now, that's not all that emotional intelligence is, but that's the part that we're talking about for this conversation today. So I see the thumbs up and the hearts. We appreciate that. Don't forget to drop your city and your state in the chat. So the ability for Marcus to be aware of how he's feeling, and then how those feelings are affecting how he's thinking, and then how he's thinking, which is influencing how he will behave and act. That level of awareness is a skill. And to be able to manage that process of feeling, thinking, and acting, and manage that process in a productive way, that is emotional intelligence. That is a high degree of emotional intelligence. And it begins with awareness. But we're talking about how financial intelligence is literally a major component of emotional intelligence. Or said a different way, emotional intelligence is a major part of financial intelligence. That what I didn't say was financial knowledge. Now, it's right at 6 minutes as you guys are coming on. These broadcasts are right at 20 minutes, and we endeavor for them to be engaging and conversational, etc. So we hope you will tune in to this conversation. So, emotional intelligence is a large part of financial intelligence. But notice I didn't say financial information. I said financial intelligence. See, we can have financial information. We can read books. We can, listen to podcasts. We can go to conferences, seminars, events, and, a host of things, right? And you can get financial information. But financial intelligence is actually applying, or the skill of applying information and gaining insight. So the ability to apply financial knowledge, and then from that application, you gain insight, you gain intelligence, you gain perspective. Now that is what is going to transform your life and transform your business. So understand, just because a person reads books, just because a person, for example, I was an investment representative for several years. I was a banker before that. 20 years ago, had certifications in finance and money management, had investment licenses. So I understood, I had financial knowledge. But just because I had financial knowledge, that didn't automatically mean I had financial intelligence. Because financial intelligence is the skill of applying knowledge and gaining insight from that process. So as I apply financial knowledge, whether it be budgeting, whether it be saving, whether it be investing, whether it be calculated risk, etc., applying financial knowledge is what generates financial intelligence. But guess what? In order to apply financial knowledge, it requires emotional intelligence. It requires the ability to be aware of how you're feeling, and then to be aware of how those feelings are affecting how you're thinking, and then know that how you're thinking is going to influence what the choices you make. And every one of us, come on, put it in the chat. All of us have made spur of the moment financial decisions that we look back on and say, like, man, why did I do that? Come on, am I right about it? If that is true for you, just put hashtag facts in the chat. Every one of us, we've said we're not going to spend a certain amount of money, and we spent more than that. We said we weren't going to buy X, and then we bought it. We said we were going to do certain things, but then in certain moments, in certain situations, we ended up doing the opposite of what we originally decided. Or, Friday afternoon, remember the song from back in the day, what is it? Was it Friday night, just got paid, something like that, money in my pocket, feeling all right, something along those lines. So, I think what's the song? One of the other songs. I think I heard it was a TikTok or whatever. Gosh, I think is it Boosie? What's the part of that song? When it said about pulling up to the club, gas tank on E, all drinks on me, something like that. And I'm like, what? It was some TikTok dance people dancing to, but I was listening to the words like pulled up on E, all drinks on me. But anyway, I'm just simply trying to say that it takes emotional intelligence to create financial intelligence, because just because a person has knowledge about finances or money, that doesn't mean they have intelligence, because you have to manage how you feel. You have to be aware of how you feel, and then manage how you're feeling productively, because how you feel affects how you think. How you think affects the choices you make, and the choices you make produce the life you live, right? In large part. So what I'm saying on this Friday is, as I want us to, when you finish listening to this broadcast, I want you, number one, to understand the basics of what emotional intelligence is. And the basics of emotional intelligence is your ability to be aware of how you're feeling at a moment, and how those feelings are affecting how you're thinking. And then those thoughts are ultimately going to turn into what? Actions or behaviors. So if you can be aware of that process at its genesis, you can then influence that process productively so that the outcome is something beneficial and productive. So when it comes to financial intelligence, it's the ability to be aware of how you're feeling about money, how you're feeling about a financial decision, the influences upon your financial decision, and then being able to make wise financial choices, even if they're contrary to how you're feeling at a particular moment. And here is one of those here. As you guys are coming in, by all means, please drop your city and drop your state in the chat. But think about this for a second. Every time you spend money, you have a feeling. Am I telling the truth? Every time you swipe a card, every time you, Zelle, Cash App, or whatever, there's every time you engage in a financial transaction, it's also an emotional transaction. I want to sit on that for a moment because this is for entrepreneurs, small business owners. I need you to understand something, that every time you make a business decision and it involves money, there's an emotion hidden in that transaction. And if the emotions are not managed productively and wisely, then those emotions can negatively affect your business. They can negatively affect how you manage and lead your business. So again, emotional intelligence is a large part of financial intelligence. And so when you leave this broadcast, you can say, man, listen, I got a baseline understanding of what emotional intelligence is. It's my awareness of my feelings, how those feelings are affecting my thoughts, and how those thoughts influence my behaviors, right? So that's, again, the basics of emotional intelligence. But financial intelligence is the ability to take financial knowledge and apply it intelligently and learn from that application. So going back to my own experience, when I was an investment representative, I mean, I had my 63, and then going into the 26, and then moving into an advisory role, etc. I had a lot of financial knowledge, I mean, you had to pass these tests, and they're 3 hours. I mean, you've got to accumulate a large body of knowledge about finances and money and economics and investments and derivatives and dollar cost averaging and and the terms and so forth. So I had a lot of financial knowledge, but that didn't automatically mean I had financial intelligence, right? I mean, I was in my 20s. I mean, I was a banker. My first job was managing a $7.5 million profit and loss for an oil company, and I ended up being a store manager for a year to learn troubleshooting. But the P&L responsibility was $7.5 million. That gave me a lot of financial information, right? A lot of financial information. Learning about taxation, inventory, learning about gross profit, net profit, SG&A expenses. So on and so forth, right? So I'm getting all of this financial knowledge, but then I now have to manage my paycheck. And see, managing my paycheck is emotional intelligence and financial intelligence. I had a lot of financial knowledge that came from my job. Does that make sense? So when I started Benjamin Consulting Group, as I said, Tuesday, any business is an extension of the person who's owning it. It's an extension of the partners who are involved in it. It is a separate legal entity, but it will follow the decision-making process of the people who own the business. So if the people who own the business have low emotional intelligence, then the business is going to have low financial intelligence. If the people who run the business have high emotional intelligence, then they're going to have high financial intelligence. Do you see the correlation? If you have high emotional intelligence, you're going to have high financial intelligence. Does that make sense? Because you're gonna have the ability to make financial choices that are in the best interest of the company in its present and in its future. But if you have low if you have a low emotional intelligence, then you're going to make choices that are in the detriment of the company, short term or could be long term. So I want you to grasp that emotional intelligence and financial intelligence are hardwired together. And I want to be clear, and I want to throw something out there. I want to throw it out there because it needs to be put out there, that when it comes to access to capital, when it comes to managing money, when it comes to banks loaning money, etc., we have to be honest and admit that there are many banks that look at the typical African American entrepreneur, the typical black entrepreneur, and they are making a decision that that individual more than likely has low financial intelligence. Now, I know, again, people can't come out and say it because, again, it creates problems. But when you look at the data and when you look at the ratio of credit scores, revenue or confirmed revenue, and business idea, it's still substantially disproportionate in the number of loans given to other communities of people versus given to African Americans. And then even if the African American is approved for a loan, the dollar amount that he or she is approved for a loan. Now, because again, there's this unfortunate perspective that the typical black person is low in financial intelligence and therefore low in emotional intelligence. Now, again, no one is out there saying that. No banker is saying that, etc. But when it comes to a banker having the autonomy to make those decisions, unfortunately, those decisions don't regularly go in the favor of an African American. Now, with that being said, that doesn't take away the responsibility of the African American entrepreneur, small business owner, to gain financial knowledge and increase his or her emotional intelligence so that they can in turn develop financial intelligence or increase their financial intelligence. Because what we don't talk about often is that when a person receives an investment into a firm, whether it be angel investor, private equity, venture capital, whatever the case may be, right? Those people that are putting money into that business at the end of the day, whether it's the idea or not, they are still believing in a person. Let me say it again. They are believing in a person. And emotional intelligence has a way of increasing your believability. Does that make sense? That if we write this check for $100,000, or depending on the scope, $1 million or $5 million or whatever the case may be, that this person has himself or herself and a team of people who are going to manage this money intelligently in the direction of the business strategy. So what am I trying to say to you? I'm saying that you can't ultimately control how other people see you, but you can control your emotional intelligence and your financial intelligence. You can control and you can actually develop this skill. You can increase this skill. I mean, literally, over the course of 6 months to a year, your financial intelligence can grow 3x or 5x in the matter of a year. Why? Because every day you're making financial transactions. Let me say it again. Every day you're making financial transactions. You're making, I don't know, 8 to 10 financial transactions per day. And depending on what kind of business you're running, it may be 30 to 40 financial transactions per day. You're constantly making money choices, which means you are constantly in the school of emotional intelligence and building emotional intelligence. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, as I got a minute and a half left, guess what one of the greatest principles of financial intelligence is? Discipline. It is the ability to have the money and still tell yourself no. It is the ability to have the cash and still say, not yet. It is the ability to have the cash and say, no, I'm not doing that now because I need to do this now. The ability to make trade-offs even when you have the ability, even when you have the means. That's developing emotional intelligence that directly correlates to financial intelligence. You see, this is so important, ladies and gentlemen. This is so important because as we close out in my last minute, as you are building your business, as you are growing and scaling your business, people are going to make judgments about you. Listen, people are going to make judgments about you, good, bad, or indifferent. They're going to make judgments. And your responsibility isn't to ultimately control what those judgments are, because none of us can ultimately control how another person sees us. But what we can do, what an individual can do, what is within our control, is developing emotional intelligence that correlates to financial intelligence and being able to communicate well that you have the ability to manage money well and manage it in the direction that it needs to go in for the ultimate success of the company. You can control that persona, that perception, and that reality. You can control that. And so when people start talking about credit scores and personal credit scores or business credit scores and DMB scores and trade lines and things like that, all of those things are important, but they don't always tell the whole story, right? So that's why you have to have the ability to convey a sense of emotional intelligence and financial intelligence, even if you've made some bad financial choices, in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. And listen, for those of you who are African American, it's even more important for you to grasp this because we know that in the typical lending space or VC space or private equity space, there's a lot more latitude given to a white founder than to a black founder. I mean, we've seen we've seen the stories, right? We've seen the blog reports, the news reports of XYZ company failed, mismanaging money, mishandled this, bad investments here, bad investments there, and then that individual or those individuals are able to go and get what? More capital 6 months later or a year later or 2 years later, even though they mismanaged 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, and even more in many instances, especially when you look at WeWork. I mean, how much money that was mismanaged, but the guy still keeps getting money. So there's much more tolerance in general for a non-black founder as it relates to how they are perceived when it comes to managing capital, when it comes to financial intelligence. And I want to challenge and encourage you, whether you're a black founder, a non-black founder, a black CEO, entrepreneur, non-black, whatever the case may be, you have control over your financial intelligence. You have control over your emotional intelligence. And a major part of this is managing risk. Because when you are spending money in business, whether it's a grant, whether it's a loan, whether it's, private equity, whether it's venture capital, whether it's your own cash or whatever, listen to me, that you are responsible for managing that money in a way that impacts the business positively. You're responsible for directing that money in ways that can generate an ROI, a return on investment, or return on capital metric, as it's called in other circles. But you want that to be the reality. You want it to be the reality that the perception and the substance is that that guy right there has financial intelligence. I like him. I believe he can manage this money. I believe she can manage this money. I believe they've got a team in place that they're going to make solid decisions and they're not going to shut the door and keep out influences, etc. Does that make sense? So I want you to grasp today as I close this conversation that there is a hard correlation between emotional intelligence and financial intelligence. There's a hard correlation between your ability to be aware of your own emotions and feelings and how those emotions and feelings are influencing how you think, and then in turn, how you think is influencing the choices that you make financially. You need to be aware of that. And number two, you need to be aware that financial intelligence isn't just based upon knowledge. It's not just based upon knowledge. It's based upon the ability to convert knowledge into action, and then over time, you're refining that knowledge and refining the application of that knowledge. And therefore, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, your financial intelligence is compounded. And I'm telling you, there's a different, and I hate to use this term, but I'm using it for cultural purposes. There's a different vibe. There's a different aura that you convey in a room, in a networking conversation, when you have high emotional intelligence and high financial intelligence. You don't even have to, you don't have to even say nothing. It's an essence about you. It's a gravitas you carry because of emotional intelligence and financial intelligence. So listen, if this has been a help to you, put hashtag yes it has in the chat. If something that I've said has been a help to you, put hashtag yes it has in the chat. And you see at the bottom of the screen, the business conference that we have coming up May 31st. Register.advantagetomorrow.com. Our company is the host for it. You see at the top there some of our sponsors and partners in making this event a reality. And we've got several panelists, etc., that'll be a part of this. That'll be released literally this afternoon. You'll be seeing that shortly. But then our featured speaker, who will be on site in person, will be none other than Damon John from ABC's Shark Tank and the CEO and founder of Fubu. All right. So listen, I'm getting out of here. You guys have been fantastic. Again, drop your city, drop your state in the chat. If it's been a help to you, let us know. And we'll continue this conversation next week as we move into what to do and how to handle when your business revenue takes a dive. All right. God bless you guys. Have a fantastic Friday and an even better weekend.